Welcome back, class. We're going to kind of wind up chapter 8 with, I guess it's a topic that a lot of companies are somewhat reluctant to, I guess, face, and that is strategies for getting smaller. There's a lot of rationale or a lot of reasons why companies get smaller or why companies are forced to get smaller. And as we kind of go down through these, I think they'll become pretty transparent, pretty realistic. And some of you may have, if you've already been out in the workforce, may have witnessed some of this: company layoffs, liquidations, bankruptcy, that kind of thing. So foreclosure. So let's kind of go through this. But I think it's extremely important that we talk about this because um, in the um, in the market for goods and services, it is extremely difficult to develop that long run, profit margin that's required to move a company forward and keep it moving forward. So let's jump in here and we'll talk about these strategies for getting smaller. The first one is retrenchment, reducing the size a part of the company's operations, often through laying off employees. Small retreat rather than losing the battle. Again, if you think about it, whether it's leadership, strategic planning, finance, a lot of it is based on military strategy. A lot of the terminology will come out of military strategy. That textbook that when I was at Ohio State, everybody in finance, especially MBAs, had to read that, Art of War. I mean, it was required reading. And I think that's one reason that you see a lot of this terminology when we get into these phases of corporate structure and corporate discussion. You eliminate the underperforming brands is one way to do it, or laying off employees through cost efficiencies. The big worry right now, if you're listening to, I don't know, Fox Business, you're listening to CNN, or I don't know, ABC, CBS, whomever you listen to for at least your business news, there is a significant concern on what AI is going to do with the workforce going forward. Is it going to eliminate the workforce? Is it going to just reposition the workforce? Is it going to require changes in specialization and new training and opportunities? And I don't think anybody knows, but I think this is going to be an issue that's going to be forthcoming with AI. You saw a lot of layoffs and closures during COVID. I mean, COVID was a part of my professional career that I just assume not ever have to revisit. But it caused a lot of companies to downsize and, as they say, to retrench. And typically, retrenches, you're going to see it in laying off employees, and it's extremely disheartening to have to lay employees off. I've had to do it in the past on more than one occasion. It is not a fun proposition to have to lay employees off. You're talking about retrenchment. Coke and Pepsi's had to do it. Pick and Pay talked about retrenchment in the text. Baby, the clothes brand, has moved online. DineEquity has made some adjustments. So a lot of companies have gone through the retrenchment process. And again, it's they consider it a small retreat rather than losing the battle. And it's tough on a lot of employees, but at the end of the day, the company is forced through a multitude of reasons to move forward with retrenchment, again, and hoping to stay viable in the short run so that they can come back and some of them come back even stronger in the long run. So that retrenchment's the first one. You've got restructuring, divestment, selling off part of a company's operations. We talked earlier, I think it was when we were talking about the diversification, the relationship that Ford had with Hertz, and it just didn't work. Just didn't, the theory and on paper it looked good, but it just didn't work. And so Ford sold Hertz. Newell Rubbermaid sold out to private equity. Brown-Forman sold a lot of their liquor brands to Sazerac. And you see it. A lot of times it's the actual reversing of forward vertical integration when you're restructuring. So remember, it ties back to when we were talking about the integration strategy. So restructuring is reversing forward vertical integration. So just keep that in mind as we kind of walk through this. So one, you can divest it. A second thing on restructuring, you can spin one off, creating a new company whose stock is owned by investors out of a piece of a bigger company. Conoco Phillips, especially their refining operations, they spun them off. Sears spun off Lands' End. Lands' End's a clothing store, kind of like Eddie Bauer, kind of like there's a bunch of them out there, but Sears spun off Lands' End. And when you're talking about spin-off, so divesting, it's more reversing forward vertical integration. When you're spinning off part of your company, it's reversing backward vertical integration. But again, restructuring, similar to retrenchment, you're trying to do what you can in the short run to enable the company to be viable in the long run. And again, in a lot of cases, they come back. Unfortunately for Sears, they didn't. But in a lot of cases, companies will come back even stronger. The third one, they talked about a diversification discount. Tendency of investors to undervalue the shares of a diversified company. Unlock hidden shareholder value by breaking up diversified companies. That's what they're considering diversification discount. You had Fortune Brands, and it was a breakup of diversified companies to increase stock value. You had Spirits. You had Jim Beam and Maker's Mark, and that's where they went to the Centauri Holdings Limited. You had household goods. You had Moen Faucets, golf equipment, Titleist, and Fila. So you have a lot of these brands that they take, and so Fortune Brand took and they started breaking up these diversified companies. Again, Fortune Brand were in the spirits, they were in the household goods, they were in the golf equipment. And again, when we talked about diversified, you were talking about in markets, in new markets. So Fortune diversified, they went in, it didn't work for them, and they took and they broke it up and sold it. Sold Jim Beam, Maker's Mark on the spirit side, and the household goods, Moet Faucet sold it to Centauri Holdings Limited, which I think is a Japanese company. And then the golf equipment on the Titleist, they sold it to Fiat. So that's one way. That's diversification discount. That's the third one. Fourth one is liquidation, shutting down portions of a company's operations, often at a significant financial loss. GM, a few years ago, shut down Geo, Saturn, Oldsmobile, Pontiac. I mean, growing up as a kid, a lot of the muscle cars, you had a Pontiac GTO, you had Oldsmobiles, you had, and then later on the Geo and Saturn, but they were brands or manufacturing lines that GM shut down because they were unprofitable. The goal is to become leaner and meaner. You've heard that, and avoid total financial ruin. Borders Group was unable, Borders, and I can remember my first job in DC. Borders was a huge bookstore, and it was a bookstore that a lot of professionals went to buy their books. And Borders tried through some of the liquidation. But they just couldn't salvage the company. And it was a shame because Borders books it was a great place to buy, especially academic books and especially professional type books. And it was not only the DC market, but in a lot of markets across the United States. So they've gone through kind of so we've gone through concentration, we've gone through diversification, we've gone through getting smaller. And now they're going to jump to kind of portfolio planning and corporate level strategies. In portfolio planning, they provide you with the definition. It's a process that helps executives make decisions involving their company's various industries, especially how to manage each industry and the allocation of resources across industries. And they use GE in the textbook as an example of this. And so you've got GE that did a pretty good job at this. They've had their ups and downs, and I think they've been up, they've down. I think they're starting to come back. And so they've moved in the text from the portfolio planning and corporate level strategy, and they use the example of GE, and they used to then they move you to the example of BCG, Boston Consulting Group. And they have like a little matrix, and the text has several of these little matrices scattered out. I can't remember if I wrote this one down on the page. I must not have written down the page number. But they provide these matrix, and some of them are 2x2, some of them are 3x3s. That in Boston Consulting Group, it's a built-in consulting group, and they categorize industries as high and low, and or your market share of the industries is high and low, or your place in the industry is high and low, and it's based on market share. And it's based on growth rate of the industry. So those are the two things that Boston Consulting Group base theirs on. And they go through it's kind of the four outputs or the four results of the Boston Consulting Group strategy, at least approach, is portfolio approach. And the first one's a cash cow. High market share units within slow growing industries. Industries have bleak futures. Profits should be diverted from investments or diverted for investments in more promising business. So you've got a cash cow, got a high market share within a slow growing industry. Take the dollars that you're gleaming from that cash cow and divert it into another company, maybe in another industry, or at least one that is a more promising business. Number two is you've got dogs, low market share units within slow growing industries. Probably the best thing to do is a bullet to this particular business, and then the authors actually say, candidates for divestment, where executives have issues with these so-called dogs, as they're classified by BCG, is sometimes they hang on to them too long. Sometimes they don't know what to do with them, and they hang on to them too long. And we'll get into that a few minutes later. You've got stars. Number three, high market share within a fast-growing industry, right prospects and candidates for growth. Take some of that money from the cash cow and start investing that money in the stars. You're trying to move those forward, trying to make them the alpha dogs of your company. And then fourth is the one that I talked about when executives don't know exactly what to do, are the question marks. Low market share units within fast-growing industries. Do you try to build them into stars, or do you divest them? And that's where executives usually lose their way. They either don't have enough information, or they're getting misinformation from some of their subordinates, and they make a mistake because they either don't build them into stars when they should have, or a situation where they shouldn't have tried to build them into stars and they do, and they end up having to divest them. So the question marks, you just don't know, the executives don't know what to do with. Do you build them into stars? You divest them. And then they go back to GE, because GE developed the attractiveness strengths matrix with the help of a leading consulting firm. So BCG is a little 2x2. GE's is a 3x3 with 9 boxes and recommendations. And so every company, I can't say every company, a lot of companies will work with consulting groups, whether it's BCG or another one of the consulting groups, to try to understand this portfolio planning and how to utilize portfolio planning to provide the direction or to help with the strategic planning of the executives in the company to move them forward to ensure that they are profitable both in the short run and the long run. The limitations to portfolio planning, it oversimplifies the reality of competition by focusing on only two dimensions. Because you're focusing on two dimensions, you are eliminating all of the realistic aspects of the market. You create motivational problems among the employees. If the employees get wind of where you are within one of these, whether it's the GE matrix or the BCG matrix, kind of where the executives are slotting the businesses in these matrix, it can create motivational problems among the employees. And then thirdly, it does not identify new opportunity. It only deals with existing businesses, and you can't reveal new industries. When you're only dealing with new businesses in these, either the BCG 2x2 or maybe the GE 3x3, you don't have the opportunity to find these new you can't jump in and focus in on the potential new opportunities that are out there. And with that, we're going to wrap up chapter 8. And the next time we get together, we're going to talk a few minutes about chapter 9. And chapter 9, we're going to talk about building blocks of organizational structure. Talk to everybody the next time. Thank you.